I'm Alex Rodriguez.
And I'm Jason Kelly.
From Bloomberg, this is The Deal. Each week, you'll hear us in conversation with business icons.
This show will explore deal-making across sports, media, and entertainment.
That is a harsh lesson in business.
Sports is not as simple as bringing a bunch of big names together.
I didn't want to do another stomp you out speech.
It opened up so many more doors.
The show is called The Deal.
Listen to The Deal.
Listen to The Deal on Spotify.
With threats to our nation waiting around every corner, adaptability is more important than ever. When conditions change without notice, quick strategic thinking is crucial. And with obstacles consistently impending, determination is essential in overcoming them. It's this willingness, decisiveness, and resilience that sets Marines apart. With our fighting spirit, we don't just fight battles, we win them. Marines are the constant our nation counts on to fight the unknown. And through adaptable problem solving, we do just that. Learn more at marines.com.
Welcome back to another episode of The Blue Turf. This is Thad Bell from the Kansas City Soccer Journal. With me is Eric Bergerud, as usual. I keep running out of ways to introduce you, but man about soccer all over the place. How are you, sir?
I'm doing fine. We're recording this the night after Game 2 in the finals, and I was out late at the watch party at Paul and Jack's. So it was a late night last night, obviously, for some Comets fans, but definitely for the team.
Yeah, me too. I watched the game and then tried to get on a Zoom afterwards, and the Zoom, nobody ever got on the Zoom. So good.
I was wondering how that was going to work. That was pretty late.
I finally gave up around 1:50 in the morning.
Wow.
So I was sitting here waiting for this time to start, and I kept dozing off on the couch with the nice little breeze coming by because I was trying to not do anything else. And then fortunately, I woke up in time. All right. Let's see. First of all, I want to just say congratulations to the Comets on a great season. Congrats to Chihuahua. Back-to-back champions, well deserved. Just what's anything to add to that, Eric?
Yeah, I think for the Comets, they played incredibly well in both games, in my opinion. I thought the game plans were smart. Just sometimes you go head-to-head with a great team and you don't get the results. Diego Reynoso played lights out both games. More saves that he got thrown into in Kansas City than he had to in Chihuahua, but he made an unbelievable save at the end of Game 2 to prevent a game-tying goal. And so kudos to Chihuahua. That team has a lot of depth. I know that there are all sorts of thoughts from Comets fans about the field size in Chihuahua, the refereeing, whatever else, but I think it was a fair result, not the result that Comets fans wanted, but all things considered, I think Chihuahua did enough to win that series.
Oh, they did. Again, I prefer the larger field. I have some complaints about refs at times too, but it still comes down to Chihuahua was the better team. And honestly, we knew going into the series, Chihuahua was the better team. We knew that they were likely going to win it. I know that Comets had opportunities to win it. Comets had great game plan, and just if a few things fell the right way, they go home champions. But we kind of always knew that Chihuahua was the favorite team, so it's a fair result.
I think. Is life really fair at that? I think it was a predictable result. I don't know what fair means, but I think there were just a couple small things in each game that had they gone a different way, there would have been different results. And so on the one hand, that can be a frustration. On the other hand, that can give you optimism that with small adjustments, the Comets could and should be competing for a championship next season.
Oh yeah, I think they would. I think they are well positioned to be competing for, top of the conference and potentially a championship again next season. Maybe add a player here, things like that. But just also having same guys back, some growth from some of the young guys, things like that.
Yeah, a couple of things. We've talked at length about the roster changes, moves that Coach Stokic made through the regular season. That was the team best poised to beat Chihuahua. Chihuahua is a team that has a lot of speed, that plays well defensively, that you have to defend defensively. And I think Kansas City was in a better position in April to compete against them than they would have been in January, based on some of the changes that took place. And so kudos to the Comets organization for progressing throughout the year and getting there. Are there things that were noticeable to me in the two games that could be addressed over the offseason and better position Kansas City next year? Absolutely. But I think the game plan was solid. Sometimes the ball doesn't bounce the way you'd like.
And sometimes you just get outplayed. That's the way it is.
Yeah, I think in game one, I don't think Chihuahua outplayed Kansas City in game one at all. I think that Kansas City came in, did what they needed to do in the first half. They're just some small things that changed momentum, but it's the small things that ultimately turn into the result. And so I think that the Comets coaching staff will look at game film of these two games and look at just a few things defensively that might have been different. I think that there's some challenges playing in Chihuahua that they address some of them, but not all of them. And let me give you an example. It's really hard to play out of the back in Chihuahua, meaning the goalkeeper drops a ball to a defender who may kick it back to the goalkeeper. He has that one touch. They will press hard, and the field's so small. You run the risk of just launching it and getting a three-line pass there. So you have to adjust for your circumstances. But in Kansas City, I thought that it was a smart game plan. And sometimes the goals don't go in, sometimes they don't.
Yeah, and by me saying things like they got outplayed or something like that, it's just that I think Chihuahua was the better team on the night, and the game plans come into that, but just individual play, less mistakes here or there, things like that. The shots go in that they take. It's just all of that comes together. It's not being critical of one team versus the other. It's just the way the ball bounces.
Well, the other thing I would say is I thought that Neto was tremendous in this series. I just think that Reynoso was lights out, and Reynoso was honored by the league as goalkeeper of the playoffs. So your top players have to rise to the top. Sorry to be a little bit redundant there, and you find out really quickly when you're in a matchup like that who can compete, who couldn't. And I think that goalkeeping was strong for the Comets throughout the playoffs into the finals. I thought the defense, in particular, game two was terrific. To hold back Chihuahua the way they did, they were blocking shots everywhere. I think there's a few things to work on in the midfield. And I think that if you were to ask the Comets forwards, they would tell you straight up, we should have scored more goals in this series. They did a tremendous job, particularly Escalante, defending primarily Reggett, but also Marquez. Chihuahua's defense made a huge difference in both games.
Well, they did. I think they essentially marked the two target forwards out of the game for the most part. I mean, they got their chances. Rian got a goal. And they, played off some of the other guys, but they were not as big a factor as you would hope that those two would have been. But I think that is just a testament to how well Chihuahua played them.
Yeah, I think maybe this is a good segue just broadly in terms of what we've learned this season, what to expect next season. And for me, what became abundantly clear, not just with Kansas City, I think we saw this with Milwaukee too, is there's an expression that you would appreciate that from your time covering sport in Kansas City. Play your kids, play your young guys. It's becoming very clear that speed has become a defining factor in success in this league. And so the notion that teams can just be methodical, taking the ball up the field or defending. I think that you're going to see roster changes across the league to enhance more speed. What Chihuahua has is speed and stamina. I mean, they have skill, obviously, but speed and stamina that allow them to compete on small surfaces, big surfaces, anywhere. I don't think they're afraid of playing against anybody on any day in any arena. And so I think you'll see other teams adjust. That'll be interesting to see what impact it has on the Comets roster, but on other rosters as well, in terms of what are coaches and GMs valuing. Clearly, you want to have talent on your team, but you want to be able to run against a team that's focused on that transition game. And if I were in the Western Conference, which Kansas City isn't, I'd absolutely be thinking about, what do I need to have on my roster to compete against Chihuahua? What's going to make me not just at home, but there at Corner Sport Arena, what's going to give me a chance to win? And it's not going to be a team that slowly moves the ball in any direction.
No, and we talked about this throughout the year: speed, transition game, all of that. That does not mean if you're an older player you can't be fast and still competing in this, because that's obviously not true. It just means it's a little harder to do when you're a little bit older and maybe slowing down a wee bit. I've been very happy with the younger players for the Comets, and I think they're going to continue to grow, and hopefully they will continue to look for some other people who can fill in those roles. I know there's players that are on the roster or have been in the practice squad that, maybe they can step up for this next year also.
Well, I think that overall positive for Comets young players. I do think there's an opportunity to get in the weight room a little bit more, because getting bodied off balls, this is not only a fast league, but it's a physical league too.
Yep.
And so to compete, I mean, we've been at this a long time this season. That started in November. That's a half a year. Games, practices, etc., and your body takes a toll over that. And so coming into next season's training camp with a little more muscle, a little more oomph, it could make the difference in some of these close games.
Yeah, for guys like Mikey Linus and Leo Acosta, getting full seasons under their belt, they now know what they need to do to be better for next year. So hopefully that will come into play also.
I'm Alex Rodriguez.
And I'm Jason Kelly.
From Bloomberg, this is The Deal. Each week, you'll hear us in conversation with business icons.
This show will explore deal making across sports, media, and entertainment.
That is a harsh lesson in business.
Sports is not as simple as bringing a bunch of big names together.
I didn't want to do another stomp you out speech.
It opened up so many more doors.
The show is called
The Deal.
Listen to The Deal.
Listen to The Deal on Spotify.
Yeah, no, I think so. I mean, there's an adage about it taking 3 full seasons for a player to fully make that transition into soccer. So to expect everything in 1 year, that's not realistic. But using that adage, imagine how much better Marco Fabian is going to be next year. Imagine how much better Kelvin Oliveira is going to be next year, just getting more reps. And so if you're a young player, it's not just the soccer IQ, but also the indoor soccer IQ, and you have to figure it out. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. I think that the Comets will. Well, actually, this is something I wanted to bring up with you, Thad. And so I don't know if you caught any of the post-game award ceremonies. I have really no strong opinions on what to do when you finish in second place. I noticed that some Comets players took their medals. Others took them off right away. And so, I mean, what it stood for me is sort of like the perfect conundrum there is we made it this far and there's something to be proud of, but that's not what we wanted. We wanted a championship. So I respect both schools of thought. The players who were like, hey, I know this isn't what we wanted, but I'm happy that we were one of the 2 teams that made it to the final. And I also respect the players who are like, that can't be good enough. It's going to be the first place medals. It's going to be the trophies. It's going to be the ring or nothing. And so I think you're going to see a Comets team coming back in the fall with repurpose, rededication. And I can't tell you how many interviews I had this year at that where it was players, coaches who pointed to the fans and said that the fans made a huge difference this year. And without the fans, where would this team have been? If you look at regular season attendance, Kansas City led the league. You look at the playoffs, it was loud at Cable Dome Arena for that game 1 against Chihuahua. It was sold out. That's something that sets Kansas City apart from any other team in this league.
It does. It would be great to have the final game at Cable Dome Arena.
Well, you know what you have to do is there's small. This is. I heard somebody mention this the other day. Maybe it was on the broadcast. Maybe it was Philly and Jonathan talking about just things at the margins, right? So if you look at the Comets season, they finished 3 points behind Chihuahua. Had they beaten Chihuahua at home rather than losing, right? So Chihuahua gains 2 points, they gain 1 point, and then you start just doing some marginal things in one other game, all of a sudden you have home field advantage. And so every game does matter because at the end of the season, you need as many points as you can get. And so that's where the focus needs to be. I thought that Hanoni Martinez, the great legendary Mexican soccer player, is the coach for Chihuahua, told Nick Vassos and me in our Saturday interview with him is that concentration was the most important thing he was looking for his team. Is you have to be able to concentrate for all 4 quarters. And I think if the Comets look back at the season, there's going to be some small regrets in many of those losses. You just fix a few things, and all of a sudden you're no longer a third place team. You're a second place or a first place team.
Yeah, they were not that far off. I mean, they were really good for the first third of the season, really bad for this middle third, and really good for the last third, roughly. I know that's not the exact numbers, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it just, picking up a few results here and there, even draws or, going to overtime, even if they lost in overtime on a couple of those, there's a lot of things that would have made a big difference on where they finished in the table. It is just something that hopefully now with Coach Stokke being there for a second year, getting the players he wants there for the future, maybe that cleans itself up a lot.
Right. Well, here's the other thing. I spend too much time looking at Facebook comments for MASL fans, not just Comets fans, but across the league.
Yeah, don't look at those.
Well, I still do. I can't help myself. It's convenient to talk in the moment about how life is unfair, that the fields are a different size and yada, yada, yada. But all the teams knew what they signed up for at the beginning of the season. There weren't any surprises. The schedule was out. The field sizes were posted. They're still posted on the MASL website. And if you're curious, look at the About tab under MASL, and you can see the field dimensions for every arena in the league, right? So there's really no point in arguing on May the 1st, well, if Chihuahua had a 200-foot field, they didn't. They were allowed to compete in the season with the agreement that this was going to be their home arena, and that's what they signed up for. That's what the other 12 teams in the league signed up for. We can argue about standards, et cetera, but ultimately that's where the league is right now. And it's going to be incumbent on opponents to Chihuahua and Baltimore and Monterey, if they still play at the Arena Borregos, the smaller field. How do you change your game plan to be successful there?
Yeah, and again, I don't read those comments too often, but I understand why you want more standard field sizes. I get it. I understand that. At the same time, you're right. This is what you signed up for. This is how you play. Not every MLS field is exactly the same size. Not every baseball field is the same size, obviously, things like that. So it would be good to be at a standard size, but if you do that, you may limit the number of teams that can play. And I would prefer to have a few more teams and a few less teams.
Well, and if you're a serious Kansas City soccer fan, you've been on the other side of this. You've either watched the Kansas City Wizards or the team currently now known as KC Current, formerly KC NWSL, play in a minor league baseball park whose dimensions were significantly smaller than Children's Mercy Park or CPKC. So it's not like Kansas City hasn't benefited in soccer the other way either. That's just part of the experience, and good teams will find a way to adapt regardless of the environment. And what I say about Chihuahua is they believe that they can compete on any surface in the league.
Yeah, I do kind of feel like if you compete on the smaller surface, it's easier to go to the bigger surface, but that's not always true.
Right.
Especially in outdoor, but I think indoor might be more true. But yeah, it definitely was a small arena. It has a effect on how they play, and they played it to their advantage, and the Comets did a really good job of playing to that field size in that game. So,
yeah. Hey, do you want to talk about our end of the year awards?
Well, I know you have only a few minutes left, and I was thinking that maybe we do another one of these next week.
Okay.
And we talk about awards. We talk maybe about the roster.
Okay.
I'd love to potentially. I have not had a chance to talk to Coach Stokic since yesterday. Maybe get Budzinski in on a conversation and just talk about a lot of that stuff.
No, that's cool. Yeah, I would say that there's a lot, and maybe to foreshadow what I'm thinking, I think that there's a lot to be proud of this season, and the awards that Comets players receive from the league, I totally well earned,
Yes.
and also shows how the quality has improved year over year. The Comets put together a better team, a better roster this year than they had the previous year. I don't know how anybody can doubt that. The question is going to be, what are the changes at the margins they need to make to be more successful next year? And what are other teams going to do to be more competitive themselves? Milwaukee has some choices they need to make for sure. And you look at Utica, they may have some choices to make too, now that you have multiple players wanting to be the king of the hill, pun intended. And how's that going to play out? And so we'll see.
Yep. I do want to throw one more quick thing out there before you have to go. I've been really happy with how the response has been with the games being on Golazo, CBS Golazo. I've talked to so many people that watched those games that didn't watch when it was just on 38 The Spot or on Twitch. I think that they have made great strides in getting the game in front of more people. I think Twitch was good, whether some older fans didn't like it, but it was a good thing. Being local so people can throw it on a local channel is obviously good. But Golazo got it in front of some people who would not have watched indoor soccer. And I think that's been really good. I don't know how many people I've talked to now over the last couple of weeks have watched these games and been, wow. I was talking to a former MLS player and coach who was asking me about Christian Andereos. I'm like, yes, he's really like that, and things like that. So it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think in the defense of the MASL front office, they're kind of in a position like if you have multiple kids and it's time to cook dinner and nobody wants the same thing for dinner, right?
Right.
You have some people who would be content going back to YouTube because they don't really care about audience. It's just convenience in terms of being able to access games. You have some people who like the chat feature in Twitch and got really upset when the league turned off the chat feature because some games were starting to get out of control. You have people who won't be happy unless every single game is broadcast on ESPN or some other platform, which is historically not even in line with anything that's ever happened in indoor soccer, right? And so how do you keep everybody happy? Why I like CBS Sports Golazo, and I've enjoyed calling, I did 3 games here at the last stretch, is it bridges indoor soccer with the broader soccer community in a way that none of the other platforms have. And so if you care, you, not Thad Bell, but you as MASL fans, Comets fans, etc., if you care about exposure to the broader soccer community, you will see the inclusion of CBS Sports Golazo as part of a future package as growth for the league. If what you want instead is an easy place where you and the people you go to games with can find all the games in the league and watch them wherever you want and watch them easily on replay, well, you may have a different perspective on this, but it can't only be about ease. It has to be about growing the game, because at the same time that fans are going back and forth arguing about platforms, they're also saying there ought to be minimum expectations about attendance, right? That, hey, it's great that Kansas City sells out, but look at all these other teams that are floundering. Well, you have to grow audience.
Yeah, you have to get people.
And it's not just somebody in your front office selling tickets. You have to expose different audiences to the game, and thinking intelligently about how and where you broadcast will get those, grow that interest and get those people who like what they see on their screen and want to see something even more exciting in person.
Yeah, I think I pretty much agree with everything you just said there, but it's I've been the fan on the other side, like, oh man, I wish it was just easier to watch this game or something like that, or I didn't have to go figure out which one of 4 different platforms it was on today, or even on Twitch, which stream is it on? It's like, I love the ease of being able to find things and know exactly where it's going to be. At the same time, Apple deal for MLS brings in a ton of money. The deal for the NWSL brings in money and gets the ability to watch the games out there, and getting games in front of other people who have not watched those games grows the game and then makes it more successful. And there'll be tension with not loving always the success as things grow. But I mean, again, I personally know in this span a lot of people who have watched because of Golazo. I know some people who, a friend of the family who loves sporting, went with us to a game just because we had the extra ticket that day, fell in love with the Comets, bought a shirt, then made her husband and his friend watch the game on Golazo, and now they're like, can we get tickets for next year? It grows, but you have to do the right things for it to grow.
That's absolutely right. Well, maybe next episode, Thad, we can talk about our awards and maybe what the future holds for media and other things in MASL. I think it's going to be an interesting off season. There may be some rule changes that we can
debate,
talk about in theory.
Okay.
And foreshadow where we think things will look in November.
And just as another thing, our site, who has people who love soccer, not everybody loved indoor soccer. We did a live pod from before the game. It didn't go as successfully as I wanted to because we had some technical issues that caused some feedback, but that's another story. But we did it. We had Keith Tozier on there. And by the way, I did put him on the spot to see if he was coming back next year, and he very delicately and politically answered that question as he's not going to say.
Yep.
I also asked him if there was going to be any new teams next year. He said no. But it was great to have him on there. We had Junior Kazim on to preview the game. We did a live pod from there. I think we can see that probably more next year. Some things like that. So it was just a really good growth, I think, in the last month.
Yeah, and I think Golazo helped a lot. So you connect it all together. It brings people in. And so, I think we'll have a lot to talk about next episode.
Yeah, we'll plot out if we can do all of that in one episode next time, or it might take more than one. but I would love to do some awards, and we'll talk about which kind of awards we should do. And I want to get some other people involved. Mike Kuhn, maybe we can get the professor to throw his 2 cents in.
That would be great.
I know you got a hard stop here coming up here. I appreciate the time, Eric. Thank you for all the time that you have devoted to doing this pod with me. I know it's not always been easy, and you did a great job promoting it. You do a great job announcing along with Nick. Again, just thanks a lot for everything that you do for indoor soccer.
Well, I appreciate that. And thank you, Thad, and KC Soccer Journal, that there are a few teams around the league that have had the support from the local soccer intelligentsia, for lack of a better term. So thank you for stepping up with the comments. And I think that teams in other markets would be envious of what we have here in Kansas City.
I agree. Let's see, soccer capital. I'm not going to get there. Thank you, Eric. I will talk to you later, and we are out.